Welcome to Career Coffee Chat Live. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you are tuning in from around the world. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show today and tuning into the show today, whether you're watching live or watching the replay. And today we'll be talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart. But most importantly, I want to welcome you to the show. So come on in, pull up a chair, say hi, say where you're from, say your name. Love to welcome you to Career Coffee Chat today. Today we have a very important guest, Rosie, and she is going to be talking about how to become a happier high achiever. Sound funky? Well, as someone who is a high achiever and identifies with being a recovering perfectionist, I can tell you this topic is super important because most of the people that I coach, and a lot of them are high achieving, professional driven women professionals, they want to know how to be more effective, balanced, and less stressed when it comes to achieving that peak performance. So if you've never seen my smiling face before, my name is Erin Urban. I'm the host of Career Coffee Chat Live and Podcast. And most importantly, what I do is I help experienced, evolving, and emerging professionals like you remove career roadblocks so you can achieve more clarity and confidence in your career, and most importantly, more impact, income, and influence. So I'll say hi to David tuning in today. Good to see you. Always good to see you, David. Now let's talk about that anxiety as a high achiever. Sound odd? Not really. In fact, most of the people that I coach who do identify with being high achievers tend to experience a little bit more stress. So today, what we're going to talk about is how you can become happier, healthier, more balanced, and achieve results that matter most to you. Tuning in with us is Rosie. She's my special guest today, and she will talk about the struggles high achievers often face and how you can step away from the chains that overwhelm and anxiety and to free your happier you. So more about Rosie. She's the founder of the InnerBrilliance Coaching Group, LLC. She's a certified life and career coach for over 14 years, as well as a Forbes Contributor and coach. She works with high achieving people to help them discover an easier way of living where they can experience results for their life, their career, with more joy daily. So with great joy, I welcome Rosie to the show. Hi, Rosie.
Hi, Erin. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, so you're tuning in from upstate in the United States, yes?
I am in Chicagoland.
Chicagoland. What
Yes.
now down here, Houston, Texas, it's 70 degrees outside.
Are you trying to make me jealous?
Depends on your perspective. We also miss fall.
I'm gonna take it. 70 degrees sounds beautiful. In Chicago, it could be 40 one day and 70 the next. Right now we have gloomy and 60, 50. So I'm okay with it. I'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take that. Absolutely. Good morning, Carnesia. Always great to see you tuning in from Woodlands, Texas. So, Rosie, today we're talking about a really important topic, which is how to be happier, be a high achiever, but how to be happier while you're doing it, find more joy and freedom in your life. I don't know about you, but for any of you tuning in, I love more joy and freedom in my life. Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a great plan. So I'm really anxious to hear, well, not anxious, that's not the right word, interested to hear what got you into this type of coaching. What was that catalyst for you?
That's a great question. I basically was working in marketing and advertising. And for a while, I'm very competitive brands like McDonald's, Anheuser-Busch, and Unilever. And it was so much fun, but it was really intense. And I found myself always going for my next set of goals, which I think as high achievers, that's just how we're wired, as you know, right?
Oh, so is there another way?
Pardon?
Is there another way?
I know. I think there is, and I'll share in a minute. So, yeah, so I basically just kept going for my next set of goals, and I'd be so excited. I got to a point where I was, had a beautiful condo overlooking the lake. I had my fun job, great friends and family, and I just thought, okay, now I got to get to my next thing, my promotion, get in better shape, you name it. And all I thought, I'm like, I'm so exhausted and I'm so frustrated. And I now need to put more energy into getting my next set of goals. I just couldn't sustain that level of, it's going to sound dramatic, but it felt like suffering, right? It's just all this tension. And here's the thing with high achievers, we know how to make things happen, right? But what I hear from a lot of high achievers, and this is what I was experiencing at the time, I felt like this low level of anxiety throughout my day. And like almost as if life was whizzing past me as I was just trying to get basic things done. And I didn't really feel in charge of my life. I felt like I was in reaction mode. And that's when I'm like, I have to see what is going on. There's got to be another way. And through learning more about coaching and positive psychology, I was telling you, Erin, I was a psych major back in the day. I started studying and learning that there is another way to live. And that included me getting more clear on who I was and what I wanted. And I started noticing I was living my life based on other people's definition of success.
Ooh, this sounds familiar.
What else did we know, right? You see, there's this quote I love. If you could see your path clearly laid out before you, it's somebody else's path. You've heard that before. I don't know if I got it right, but that
sounds good enough to me. I like that one.
Cool.
I'll take it.
So there I was, and I thought, oh my gosh, I am doing all these things I thought I should do and I have to do, but I wasn't really clear on what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be. And I thought, that's it, I'm done. I'm not doing things I, have to do anymore. But I also felt a little lost in where to begin and how to figure out who I was and what I wanted. I mean, I had ideas, but if I was really being honest, I wasn't even ready to fully accept those ideas because I'm still on the path of defining my success based on what other people thought or said. So finally, I went on this path. I explored my values, my strengths, what vision I wanted for my life. I also had to get clear on those types of things I said that held me back from going there. And the best part was, once I got clear on all of that, I knew where to focus next, right? So instead of looking at what's holding me back or the things I might say, you mentioned you're a recovering perfectionist. I am as well. And instead of having that negative dialogue in the back of my head consistently, I mean, it will always be there. That's just how our brains are wired. But I wasn't paying as much attention to it. I started shifting my focus on what I wanted, what I was excited about, what aligned with my truth. And when I did that, it's when the transformation happened. And it felt like, this is kind of marketing 101 I kind of bring into my coaching, which is when I got really clear on my message, I put it out into the world in a consistent way, and I hope in a compelling way. I started to attract people and situations and opportunities that align with my deepest desires. So I went from this person who was constantly striving and sometimes frustrated and forcing results to attracting what I desired. And
isn't that interesting?
Yeah. And that's where I feel like the happier high achiever comes in. You still are getting results because that's what we hope for. But I became happier along the way. In fact, I hope you could see I sort of flipped the switch and said, let's start with happiness. What makes me happy, who I am, what I want, accept that, and then use that as my guidance.
That's brilliant. And it really is. And that's why you call your coaching company InnerBrilliance, because that's what you're finding is that inner light. What's your true north? Like, where are you aligning? Where are you lining up? And where's the misalignment and the gaps? Because you're absolutely right. This story is very, very familiar. But before I go there, I want to say hi to Deanna, who's also tuning in from Chicago. And she says, yes, the weather changes often. It's interesting. It's almost like anywhere you are. But I know it's a saying in Texas, if you don't like the weather, wait 15 minutes. Probably same in Chicago as well.
You should bring at least 6 changes of clothes throughout the day because you just have no idea.
Yeah, yesterday I think I started off with more clothes than this. I had like a long sleeve shirt and a jacket and long pants, and then by the end of the day I was in shorts and a t-shirt.
Right. How it is. You have to be agile.
You have to be agile, which brings me back to our topic. Being more agile and understanding who you are, because let's face it, I don't know, Rosie, what do you think? I think that most of us, when we graduate college, we're young professionals, we feel like, okay, I'm now out in the world. I need to get a job. I need to, follow the ladder. That's what we know. And that's what we want to follow because we should do these things, right? Society expects us to follow this path. So when you said if the path is clearly laid out for you, it's probably someone else's path. That struck a chord for me particularly, and I'd love to hear from anybody tuning in. Does that strike a chord with you? I mean, when you feel like almost, am I forcing this, or is this flowing?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And as you're sharing that, as we're waiting to see if it resonates, it's why we just, from childhood, pretty much set to go through our schooling, get a good job, and maybe, through conditioning, get married, the typical what society or your original family shares. And so in our 20s is when we're first noticing, oh, wait, I might not want to do everything, or it could be different ages for everyone. But I think it's like you said, I think after college, we get our good job. It's like, wait, I might not want what everyone is thinking I should have. And Aaron, I know you're obviously been coaching and you know this, but they say in our 20s is when we start to question that conditioning from our original family more than ever. And you start making more decisions that move away from, or at least again, you're questioning it. They actually say the highest rate of divorce is between 28 and 32. Because if you had, got married before that, you are thinking this is what you wanted, and then you learn more about yourself. So it's just such a pivotal time. And I think such a good reminder that if you're in your 20s, or if you know someone in their 20s, is to allow them just to explore from careers to jobs, and just give yourself that breathing room. It doesn't have to be so rigid early on.
Right. I think what I see in my coaching work is the real mid-career crisis, if you will, that wake-up call typically happens mid-30s, early 40s. In the 20s is where we're redefining who we are and moving and shifting away from, as you mentioned, the family structure. And then, of course, trying to still connect to that social structure. And I think that's maybe where we start following the path that's been laid out for us instead of by us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we start getting in this mental rut of, well, I should do this, I should do that, and I should go for the promotion. I know myself personally, I had come up to a certain point in my career where my next step was a very high level of leadership, which also meant for my profession, 80% travel.
That's a lot.
To be fair, I tried it because I figured, well, if I don't try, I won't know. So I tried it in a safe setting. So I tried some consultancy that was very similar and the type of work that I would be doing, establishing cultural changes, and Lean Six Sigma work is what I was doing then. It was horrible. I was miserable. It's like, okay, this is not for me. So what do I want to do? At that time, I'd already started becoming certified as a coach. I said, well, my next step is something local, really focus on that. And that way I can lay that groundwork. So here I am today. But yeah, it's oftentimes we're following the should. We start shooting on ourselves, I think is the phrase.
Have you heard that joke? Stop shooting on yourself. I was going
Yeah.
to mention it earlier, but it's such a great reminder that always anchors when I share that with my clients. Like they remember that, right? Oh, I'm shooting on myself again. Stop that.
Mm-hmm.
You are absolutely right. There's this spiritual concept. They say that every 7 years we integrate our learnings from the previous 6 years. So when I'm doing a consultation with a client, I have them answer a few questions. And based on how they answer the questions, I could almost tell what life stage they're in. It's so fascinating. Like you said, it could be, for myself, I might hear in the late 20s, mid 30s, or early 40s. And the mid 30s I've found is when people really, it could be earlier than that, but it's when you start saying, I think I need a new path. I'm not sure I'm going, and that's when I started thinking about coaching in my late 20s, early 30s. But when I started the business and I really made a deeper commitment to it, it was in my mid 30s. And I say, it's almost like you come to a crossroad and you think, should I stay here or go this way?
Right.
And early 40s tends to be almost like a reinvention of yourself. And that happened. That happens a lot in our career choices, right? I think people are thinking about it, but they're like, how do I take the first half, everything I've done, the first half of my life, if you will, or even the 20 years of my career, and how do I translate it into what's next? And I first heard of this concept, believe it or not, when I used to be in advertising and marketing, and our agency did this amazing presentation on Madonna. And she's been around for a while, pretty impressive. And that's what she did. She keeps reinventing herself, but it's always in alignment with who she is and her truth.
Yes. Yeah. So for those people tuning in, Rosie, what would you share with them to say, okay, if you're feeling a little frustrated, maybe a little misaligned, what might be one of some telltale signs or just indicators, if you will, that something may need adjusting?
Yeah.
Right.
I think if you're feeling a lot of doubt on your path, certainly anytime you're trying something new, you will question it. You might find yourself doubting it. Or let's say you are excited about something new. For example, when I was going to leave my stable career, I say stable because it was around the recession time in advertising. And I thought to myself, oh, I want to try this other thing, coaching. I was so excited about it. I knew it was my calling, but I still heard that voice in the back of my head. Are you sure you want to leave? Are you sure? And when you're starting to notice that disconnect, so it either could be just general doubt or fear and anxiety. And when you're starting to hear, gosh, I like this idea. This is something new. I'm on my path. And you're still hearing that voice. You are not in alignment. So you really want to start that point, just becoming aware of it, just noticing some of these thoughts that are coming up. And I actually came up with a little tool. It's a variety of tools, but I packaged it in something I call Notice It, Name It, and Reframe It.
Beautiful.
So notice it, and Aaron, you probably know these steps, but the notice it is just becoming aware of that voice when you're feeling down, exhausted, frustrated. That's, notice the thoughts that are coming up. Actually, do you know the statistic, how many thoughts we've had a day?
It's a lot of them. I don't know exactly. Yeah.
They say 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. So yes, a lot is accurate. And you may continue to hear that in the back of your head, right? And many of them can be negative, or what they would say is negative. And this is how our brain was hardwired from back in the day, to constantly be scanning for danger, right? What's coming up? What's going to happen? And back then it was physical dangers. That's how our brain was hardwired, right? Some saber-toothed tiger might be around the corner. These days, we have emotional dangers. Am I ready for the meeting? Am I, is my tech going to work? You name it. And we respond to those emotional dangers the same way. We get that flight or fight response. So again, just kind of going deeper into to answer your question of how can I know if I'm misaligned? It's because that part of your brain is being activated. First step, just notice it. Second step, I say, is I'm kind of going a little further than your question, but it's like, okay, great. What do I do? I have this doubt and fear coming up. And again, that fear is natural. It's just your body and your brain trying to protect you, right? It's saying, don't do that thing. And so the next step is, once you've identified these thoughts, is try to come up with a persona or an image that helps you capture these thoughts. Because as you can imagine, we cannot control tens of thousands of thoughts. However, your brain can recognize an image or persona. And actually, when I did this, I had a recovering perfectionist tendency, as I mentioned, the more perfectionist tendency when I first named my persona, and I call mine mean old nonna, which is not to offend the nonnas in the world, but mine was sort of reminding me of these women from my father's village who really, were maybe frustrated and upset with life, and there's always like, kind of chattering at you. And I don't know if you watch the show, The Golden Girls. If you've seen
I
it.
did. I have seen that.
Sophia, where it's like that nonna who's just always like telling you, you better, cross your T's, dot your I's. It could be any sort of persona. It could be called the judge, the critic, any public figure. ideally you don't name it mom or dad, right? We don't want to, even though it might be a little bit of that voice that you're hearing. And then once you have that image or persona, it's going to be easier to recognize. And it doesn't have to control your life. That's the big shift, right? We're sort of taking that power back. Remember earlier when I said, you feel like maybe you're in reaction mode and you're not in charge of your life. This helps to get grounded, clear. From this place, you can make better choices. Do I want to focus on this? Do I want to focus on something else? Do I want to let go of this thought and just recognize, hey, it's outdated, it doesn't serve me? Or do I want to, as I mentioned, the next phase is reframe it. Hey, let me look at what this thought is. And if it's not helping me, what does it really come down to? Usually when we're having these thoughts, there's a nugget of truth in there. So, me leaving my stable salary in advertising, that's true. That could have been fearful. Or another thought I would have was, you don't have any experience running a small business, so you can't do it. Can't do it. And I looked at that thought and I said, okay, there's a nugget of truth here, but there's a lie, a story I made up. What's that story? I can't do it. I made that up. I didn't know if that was the case. I just told myself that was the case. The truth was I didn't have experience. I'm sorry, I can go ahead.
It's a false belief. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So having that false belief and limiting belief run your life is when we start to feel that anxiety. So really looking at, what are those false beliefs? What are those limiting beliefs? Do you want to hold on to it? Just get rid of it? Do you want to find a new way of reframing it? Or maybe it could guide you in some way. That's another thing. I mean, I don't see this side of us as a bad thing. I just think it's something to be aware of. So another belief I used to have was, again, you can't give up your stable salary. So what should I do? That doesn't mean don't go into coaching, don't switch careers. It just meant maybe, that side of myself is trying to tell me something. And I recognized I needed to put a budget together, do some revenue forecasting, and see how I can make it work financially. So I like to think of it too as an opportunity to notice, hey, should I be taking different steps or different actions?
Right. And I find that when it comes to stress and anxiety, most of it comes down to fear. It's all fear-based for the most part. And what's interesting is when I recognized earlier this year, it was in January, I finally recognized or admitted that I have anxiety. And that's hard for me because I'm an overachiever and I considered anxiety as a weakness. And I think, let me know, for those of you tuning in either now or later, is that something that resonates with you? Because it was very difficult for me. I was like, well, anxiety, I'm not an anxious person, because we correlate wrongfully anxiety with someone who is just nervous and unsure. That's not necessarily the case. In fact, I find most people who are high achievers, who are high performers, push themselves very hard. And as a result, like I was doing, it's overwhelming. So it's natural to have some anxiety. And Mariama, from tuning in from YouTube, hi, good to see you. She said this resonates with me too. So having that, I guess, baseline stress that's kind of simmering at all times. And for me, it was that first thing in the morning when your brain wakes you up with the to-do list.
Yeah.
Had that, Rosie?
In there, yes.
Yeah. And for me, it was that knot, like right in the stomach. It was like, and I was like, oh, I haven't even had breakfast yet. And it was like right out, like, I'm barely even awake. What is going on? And I was like, what? Okay. One of the things is I don't put up with the current state. And as someone who studies neuroscience, behavioral science, I was like, I know there's a way out of this. So very similar to what you shared, which was identify. What was it? It was
notice it, name it, reframe it.
Name it, reframe it. I love that. So I had to first notice it. I had to admit it to myself, right? And then where is it coming from? Well, it's based in fear. It's based in fear of not being able to accomplish all the things. It's based in fear of, not showing up the way I want. And there's a whole host of it's like little buzzing flies, right? And they're all like, nee. and they're just nattering at you. Maybe it's not verbalized, but it's in there, and it comes in as this big lump of anxiety that sits in your stomach, if that's where you feel it. Some people's in their shoulders. So that's another thing. Rosie, do you help people identify where it shows up in their body?
Absolutely. I help them process it through their bodies because, again, this is the piece. It's exactly what you said. Most of my clients say they feel that low level of anxiety. And when I ask them what they want out of coaching or life in general, like, I just want to breathe that sigh of relief. Right. And that's that sense of, I think my clients are confident, but I want to get them to what I call relaxed confidence. One where they are moving forward, they are getting results and feeling good and happier along the way versus this clenching, right? Of, will I get it all done? And it's absolutely what you said. The fear-based thoughts start to take over. And that's why the noticing is important. We're not going to get rid of them, but you can replace them. You can decide to shift your attention away from them. You just don't want them to take over. And something I've created too is called my energy management method, where, again, can't control situations or people outside of us. Trust me, I've tried. It does not work. Erin, I don't know if you've tried.
Well, we would all love to. If you were an overachiever, you want lots of control, and that's based in fear too, right? It's all based in fear. You need that control with probably fear-based. So absolutely, I've been there too, wanting to control or getting frustrated because something didn't go to plan.
Well, I was going to say, if I have this plan, everything will go perfectly. And I think when we were younger, it probably did oftentimes when life was maybe a little less complex and you're just going through your day, maybe schoolwork or whatnot, or even, during college, you have your set of things you need to do. And suddenly, when we get older, we recognize it's not that simple, right? There's more responsibilities. Your life gets more complex. And to your point, the fear-based thoughts can start to take over. So when I created this energy management method was, how can we help you regulate your energy? How could we help you generate it, revitalize it, and protect it? And part of that is the processing of emotions, noticing if those emotions are somewhere in your body. And then, to your point, just, okay, now that they're here, okay, I notice it in my chest. I could ask, what color is it? What temperature is it? And I know those sound like really weird questions. Erin, do you do that with people? Do you go into?
I don't, not to that level. I do like this strategy though, because a lot of people I coach are STEM professionals and they prefer to lean on the side of the science. So we just talk about, body response, fight or flight, where you're holding tension and what that can do. It can actually even shape how you show up. So you're holding a lot of tension in your shoulders. How many of you have had your shoulders hit your ears? I'd love to hear you tune in, or like you're like this.
Doesn't it feel so good?
And just let them go. Right now, if you're tuning in or watching the replay later, just notice if that's you, and just drop the shoulders. Let your neck be long and free. Let some space be in there. And some of this came actually from my yogi, my yogi instructor. She's fantastic, and her help, understanding our somatic response in the coaching terms. How is this showing up in our bodies? So yes, please go ahead. You were saying color and what temperature is it, and
yeah, and it just helps. So Mariama, I noticed you're familiar with this, and Deanna too. It's so important to feel our emotions, otherwise they get stuck. And like you said, Erin, it's like we have the body response. Have you ever heard of eye hunch phenomena?
I have a feeling I know where this is going. What is? Oh yeah,
right. Sorry to blur things up, but so when we're like this, as you may know, then
we're literally like caving in. And I've noticed this, like the pectoral muscles tighten up, and you feel much more confident when you let the shoulders down and you let those pectoral muscles expand back and hold the shoulders back. because that when you're here, is this true with your studies, Rosie, where you start actually that shapes then how your mind responds and then how you articulate and how confident you feel. It will actually starts to shut you down.
Yes, so that's a great point. They used to think that there was a one-way signal from our brain to our body, but they found that there's a feedback loop.
Mhm.
So it's exactly what you said. I usually use a different example, but you may have heard laughter is the best medicine, right? We've always heard that. I've experienced it. If I'm feeling down, just having some joy and laughter. And the reason, the quick explanation of why that works is your brain. So if you could make some joyful moments, if you're feeling sad, right? If you could try to tap into happiness or joy or connect with someone that can help you tap into that. The reason that works is your brain, let's say, is telling your mouth, smile. We can do it now. Try
Mhm.
smiling.
Yeah.
Try being mad right now. It's kind of hard when you're smiling, right? It's because there's a signal now. The feedback loop is there's that signal from your mouth to your brain saying, she's smiling, everything must be okay. And it's kind of like you just did, right? Like if I'm like this, there's a signal going back to the brain saying something must be wrong because she's in a protection mode.
Mhm.
If I'm like this, there's messages going to my brain saying she's calm, everything's okay. So yeah,
Right.
I love connecting, helping my clients connect with their bodies because there's so much truth there, right? Our
Mhm.
brain isn't taking over all of that, but it's an important process of, and you may know this or you work with this, Erin, through cognitive behavior therapy or different sciences, but our thoughts influence our emotions, which influence our behavior and our results. So that's why I
Mhm.
often start, you can interrupt. It's like a cycle, really, right? And you can
Mhm.
interrupt this process at any point. So a lot of times I work with clients to use the notice it, name it, reframe it to interrupt the thought process.
Right.
You could do it in the emotions um, area, if it's a circle, and just noticing your emotions, processing them, notice that what's showing up in your body, and then let it go. Because once you do that, it's so much better. I don't know about you, but when I've held things in or back, they come out. My emotions eventually come out, but not in a regulated, healthy way.
It's like,
Right. It's silly, and there's just we have a way of being dramatic, and it comes out. So yes, you can look at how to process the emotion in your body or what's coming out for you, and then that next phase in the cycle is your behavior. So when you hear people talking about changing behavior, you could think about your habits, right? So
Mhm.
sometimes there's ways to change your habits. So you can really hit on any of these points to get to the change in results, right? And
Right.
that's what we always talk with as high achievers. We want to get certain results. So I like to look at these different components and ways to get to those results because it's a cycle.
Mhm.
New results give you some new empowering thoughts. The same results, or maybe results you don't love, end up leaving you in that loop of maybe
Right.
negativity, or I don't even
Mhm.
like to say negativity. I think it just maybe what you don't desire.
Unsupportive.
Yes, yes.
Right. A lot of times we aren't supporting our goals mentally. I talk a lot about mindset and how important
Mhm.
it is, particularly when you're looking at having a more productive and thriving life and career, having that right mental narrative, if you will, that's supporting your goals. And of course, our first gut response, like one of my colleagues and a good friend of mine, Robert Pennington, he's a psychologist and he speaks a lot around, you can't he's been doing this for years, so he's like all these things are like 5 seconds, stress relief and all this great stuff. But one of the things he talks about is like that first gut response. You aren't going to be able to shut that down, just like you mentioned. You're not going to be able to just say, okay, no more thoughts. Although I have done some experimenting around mindlessness that I'm happy to share in a moment.
Yeah.
But you can't just go, no, we're not having that. That will show up. But what we do with it, we have a lot more influence over and control than we give ourselves credit for. And we can breathe into it. You just notice it, breathe, smile, rescript, Think, okay, can I affect control here or not? If I can, what can I do that's positive? There's a lot of different ways we can respond to whatever it is. Mariama shared, she said, this book I recently read is a good one that speaks to this topic, The Intelligent Body by Kyle Davies. Good one. Thank you for sharing. That's very interesting. I appreciate that, Mariama. I really appreciate that. That's great.
So mindlessness, because to your point, saying we can't stop the thoughts or turn them off. It's starting with being aware, but there's that school of no thoughts. So yeah, I'm curious what.
Yes, the school of no thought. So it's very interesting. I stumbled across this true story. I was so tired I couldn't think. One night before bed, I was just scrolling through the Facebook feed, and I ran across this guy who works with animals. His name is James French. I was curious to watch some of his videos. Oh, well, that's very interesting how he connects with animals and calms down highly sensitive, reactive animals, whether they be horses, dogs, cats, doesn't matter. And I was like, well, that's very interesting. I wonder if you can do that with humans. And most importantly, how is this technique? For some reason, I just follow the rabbit trail. Normally, I don't do this, okay? This is not my normal operation, all right? But I did. And I ran across his thought process was like one of the problems we have with stress and anxiety, and to a great degree, he's right, is because we're operating a very high thought thinking level. So he calls it a very high thinking level, but what we're doing is our brain waves are in an agitated state. So instead of more alpha, calm brainwave state, we're more open to learning, make better decisions. We can discern better. We can, be more agile and flexible to our environments. We tend to operate a very high brainwave state, so very agitated. Now, it's something like this. It's like bees buzzing around your head. You've got so much going on. There's so many things just bouncing around. Does that resonate with you, Rosie?
Yeah, I mean, it's that 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day, right? And if you're uber aware of them, but it's too much, and then it's foggy.
Around, right. And one of the reasons I kind of follow the rabbit trail was because I've actually so far this year gone through 5 of life's most stressful events in 1 year. So it's a lot. And basically, I had to. It was a part of deep personal need, and also a part of my study around the science of success and help people to evolve and thrive in their careers and lives. So I found this, and he really was focusing on how to become clear of thought, basically reduce your thinking level, basically lower the agitated brainwave state, which is like, you can't really focus very well. It's hard to prioritize because all these thoughts bouncing around your head because you've got so many things. So to reduce that thinking level to a more calm state, so then it also sends a signal to your body, as we just talked about, to be more calm. And then we're showing up with a different presence. We're able to handle situations very differently. Now, how he's using it is one way, but what I found was brilliant was it worked like a charm. I've done meditation through yoga. I've done mindfulness practices for years. Nothing worked as well as this.
Wow.
And it was literally mindlessness.
So you brought yourself, you have a technique to get to this point of
0 point.
Of less thoughts.
Absolute less thoughts. Yes.
Actually, and how do you do it? Do you just decide?
Well, you can as you evolve through the process, because let's face it, how many people try to meditate? What's your first experience meditating? Right?
Yeah. When I started meditating, I listened to guided meditations. I couldn't just straight meditate, and I would do other things while I began. So I slowly was able to.
Rosie, were you multitasking your meditation?
Admit it.
I'd love to hear from you, those of you tuning in right now or watching the replay later, if you ever multitask your meditation, because that's awesome. I love that. That's great.
It's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's like, you want me not to think? Are you crazy? So I was like, okay, if this guy has a way to help me not think, I'll try it. All right. So I did. It worked. It was so simple. And what he did basically was our thoughts are always typically in the past or the future. They're never here, usually. So what he did was he leveraged our bodies, which is always present. We are physically always in the now, to bring us into the now. And how he did it was, first, you focus on a point. Doesn't matter what point, just important to focus on a point rather than letting your eyes roam around and then let your thoughts start coming. Oh, the drapes are white, or the blah, 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 right? Whatever. So you focus on that point, and you focus also your attention on being still. So you're focusing on a point and you're focusing on being still. And once you've mastered that, you also then focus on the sensation of touch. Maybe it's your hands on your legs. Then once you've mastered that, you bring in focusing on a noise. So it could be white noise, it could be birds singing, it could be your neighbor's dog barking, it could be the person mowing the lawn. It doesn't really matter what the noise is. You can use music if that's helpful, whatever. The point here is you're getting your brain so focused on things that are happening right now, it can't think that much. And he also says you'll have thoughts come in, that's normal. But what happens is if we attach to them, then that's when it becomes distracting. It's different. What's different to notice versus attach. So you don't attach to the thought and you let it go by. What I found is it's the meditation mindfulness practice has helped me develop more control, if you will, mental agility over what's going on in here. But this has really allowed me to come to a very calm state in a very anxious time. So I'd be interested in your take on that and what you've ever tried that or experienced it.
Yeah, I assume that was mindfulness because it's just being to your point, when we're stressed or not feeling good, it's because we're ruminating about the past or worrying about something in the future.
Mm-hmm.
When we're in the present moment, and that's what I meant, like our bodies never lie, to your point, right? This is the now, this is the reality. And I think just noticing in the moment what's occurring, especially connected to your body, and I believe it's the only truth there is. And it reminds me a little bit about this book called Into the Magic Shop. And it's about a surgeon, a neurosurgeon who takes time to connect his brain to his heart because he was leading so much with his thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
It just went to connecting with his heart. And then, it's not necessarily the body work, but I just love these concepts of, as high achievers, that's, I think, what it boils down to. A lot of us have all these thoughts, and how do we deal with this, and the monkey mind and the rat race mentality. And so these are such wonderful tools. Have you heard of Sean Akers' The Happiness Advantage?
I've heard of Sean Akers, and probably the book, although it's not, I'll admit, it's not bringing up a mental picture. Normally, if it was like prominent, I would have to
remember. Yeah. It basically gets into how it just reminded me of what you said, how our brain operates at an optimal level when we're happier, in a calmer state of mind. That's when it has access to better solutions. And there's all this research that I believe is a Harvard professor, some professor, where they did all this research to support it. And what I always love is to think about anecdotally, what do I notice in my own life, right? The research is important, the science is important, but just notice, I think, for yourself when, for anyone who's listening, is when do I act in a way that I love, where I feel good and I get good results? It's when I'm in the present moment. It's when I am focused on the truth of what is and the acceptance of what is now. And just continuing to be, they used to say in ancient times, the highest form of intelligence was being a witness or observer of your life. And I feel like that's a little bit of what, just, observing, I hear that noise, tuning into that noise or into your body. And thoughts will still come, but as you said, don't attach to them. I see that.
Yeah.
I see that thought that's making me feel anxious. Okay, thanks, thought, but you can go now.
Yeah, just like my yoga instructor said, just like leaves, particularly right now we're in fall across most of the continental U.S. So it's like leaves floating across, just let them float. Mariama said this technique has been transformational for her And Cornelia says, she's micromanaged her meditation in the past, or multitasked rather her meditation in the past. So she feels like maybe that's why I haven't been successful. I know when I tried not to think, that just was not successful for me. So my mindfulness practice was very intentional about certain um, types of focuses, and there would be stages through the mindfulness. That's good. However, the mindlessness, if you will, was really where I found peace. And when we have so much going on, and I'm sure for you, Rosie, and for anybody tuning in now or later, we are in almost like information overload. And a lot of us have protected ourselves, either gotten off Facebook or do less social media, or maybe we don't watch the news, whatever that is. But we're trying to protect ourselves because there's just so much coming at us. And our lives have become much more complex because now we can do more in a lot of time. We've got Zoom, we've got this, we've got that. So now we're going to cram all these meetings on top of each other. Back in the day, back in my day, we would only have like 2 meetings a day.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. So
it's great to notice that it's just part of our society today. We have a choice. I often talk about that. Just remembering you have a choice on how you want to live your life, on how you want to move forward, on what you want to focus on, whether it's taking time in your body or being able to practice mindfulness. There's so many tools out there. And Erin, I know you and I have talked about this. It's really, it could be almost the self-improvement could be information overload.
Right. How many times do we like to have a 20-step program on how to become more peaceful?
I often talk about some clients would say, I'm rushing to go to yoga, or I would do that. I have to hurry up and get my massage so I can relax. And it was just so funny. And that's when I recognized as high achievers, we need to find a different way to live. One where, again, I hope we can focus on the happiness, the joy, the things that really are meaningful. Give us that balance of pleasure and meaning. Focus on that first. And then the successes, the results, and all of that will come. And I think what you were sharing is, the techniques you just shared, the mindlessness, it's hard to say for me, is all of that is such great tools. And everyone needs different tools or different paths. I know for myself, sometimes I've tried certain things and you think, oh, that didn't work. Well, I think it's just the next step to figuring out what would work. So trying to not see it as a failure or didn't work. It's more, hey, I tried meditation, but you know what? Mindfulness is better. Or, hey, I tried mindfulness, and meditation is a part of mindfulness, but okay, now let's look at the mindlessness. And it's all just a path and a journey to exploring what works for you at different times in your life.
That's right. And everybody goes through seasons. I know for most of my life, I'm guilty of not being able to sit still until I'm so tired I can't move. I don't know if any of you tuning in resonate with that, or if that's something that you identify with, but I'm guilty of it. And I just don't know how to sit still. And it's because of my familial structure. That's what defined what you should be. And they were all workaholics. So of course, this is what I ended up. So then I had to understand or redefine, like, what does a good person look like? A good person also invests in their own well-being, right? So redefining that for myself and getting to that truth that was more part of my core. And I feel like a lot of us are in that similar mode where, particularly when we identify with being a high achiever or a high performer, we feel like not doing something every single moment makes us a bad person, when in fact that's not the case.
No, in fact, what I talk to my clients about is building in time throughout their day for recovery. And yes, when you say that to a high achiever, at first it's not easily accepted to take breaks. But I know that when I take that time to recover, even they say for women, it should be like a 30-minute transition after work between work and their evening. For men, it could be 15 minutes. But if you could just take that time to decompress, what happens is you're actually re-energized after work and you make better choices versus if we just go straight through the day, which is how I used to operate, right? At one point I was coaching and in my daytime advertising job. So I was working all day, coaching in the evenings, and super excited at the end of the evening because I loved coaching, but wow, were those mental thoughts high vibrating. So I think for people who are, like you said, constantly in doing mode, is stopping and taking even if it's 5 minutes, to journal on something, to light some candles between work and after work. And it reminds me of physicality. They say how we build muscles. We think it's when we're lifting weights or doing the work, but it's when we're in recovery mode, right? So being ripped apart during our working out, and then when the muscle fibers come together, that forms your actual muscle and strength. So I always like to remind people about that time to recover is really what makes you stronger.
It is true.
Results.
And this is a lovely note to end our show on. Thank you so much, Rosie, for sharing all your insights. It's been such a pleasure having you on the show.
So good to be with you.
And thank all of you for tuning in, whether it's now live or for those of you watching the replay. Just know that please don't be shy. Feel free to put your comments and your questions in the chat. If you're listening to the podcast, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Give us a rating and give some feedback because we want to make sure that we're here showing up for you. So, Rosie, thank you again. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you.
Probably near and dear to my heart. It's been so much fun. I could keep talking, but
so great to connect. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Yeah, it's been such a pleasure for all of you tuning in now or later. My deepest wish for you, my friend, is to keep elevating.